We start with the fallout from Donald Trump's tariff strategy, and thanks to Labor's reckless economic mismanagement over the last 3 years, Australia may have to face a recession while in a weak fiscal position. The economic turmoil in recent days saw more than 100 billion wiped from the ASX 200 on Monday, and the Australian dollar dropped under 60 US cents for the first time since April 2020. But it's not all bad news. In fact, mortgage holders are set to benefit from the tariffs with a 70% chance of a 50 basis point rate cut in May. That will certainly ease loan repayments. Here's what Treasurer Jim Chalmers had to say.
Markets are now expecting around 4 interest rate cuts in Australia this calendar year. There's even a more than even money expectation in the markets, more than 50% expectation in the markets that the next Reserve Bank interest rate cut in May might be as big as 50 basis points.
Joining me now for more on this is Senior Fellow and Chief Economist at the Institute of Public Affairs, Adam Crichton. Adam, the Australian government continues to overspend. That's something we'll discuss. But on a household level, a 0.5% rate cut would just be a godsend right now with the cost of living pressures we're facing.
Yeah, certainly that's right. I mean, that's one of the ironies of the super hysterical reaction to these tariff cuts is that actually for the ordinary punter out there, you may have 4 interest rate cuts this year. And not only that, you've got the price of petrol's fallen 15%, I think, in 3 days. So both of those key costs could be coming down for ordinary people. But as you say, the government here is really not prepared for this heightened geopolitical uncertainty, the heightened economic uncertainty. We've got taxes going up, we've got spending going up, we've got debt going up. Now, I know the Prime Minister and the Treasurer say, oh, we're so well prepared. But, you know, one thing that is worrying, and that is the effect of these possible tariffs on China. We've seen the price of iron ore drop significantly. That is our biggest export. This could hasten the end of the resource boom. And if that is the case, we need to batten down the hatches and get serious.
We may have to start approving a few projects a little bit quicker than the 10, 15 years it can take to go through all the green and red and sometimes black tape as well. Now, the Liberals have continued to self-combust this week. They dumped one of their own candidates for having the same opinions as their shadow Defence Minister. Benjamin Britton, the Liberal candidate for the New South Wales seat of Whitlam, was disendorsed by the party for saying that the Defence Force needs to remove females from combat roles in order to fix the military, in line with similar comments made by Andrew Hastie in the past. Adam, this is just more evidence of how weak the coalition is. They do not back their own. They do not back their own position and arguments. They don't tackle these difficult debates. They submit.
No, certainly. I thought the Liberal Party was supposed to be a so-called broad church. Well, this is not showing much evidence of being a broad church. I mean, that fellow's views, he said, I think, that women should not be in some combat roles. Well, that's a view that more than 50% of Australians probably
Most men should not be in those combat roles, and most men wouldn't qualify to be in them.
That is certainly true. But the point is, I mean, he's not saying anything too extreme. And the other so-called extreme view was he was anti-lockdown and he was anti-compulsory vaccination from the COVID vaccine.
So he's been on the right side of history.
So basically, he's been right about everything, and he just holds normal views. So I don't know why they've done that. They've just kind of wrong-footed the campaign again. There's all this media focus on that, and it really should be on the government and its failings.
Now to the coalition's other major bungle this week, and the party's messy retraction of its plan to have public servants stop working from home has left Liberal MPs dismayed and angry at how badly public sentiment on the issue was misread. Multiple backbenchers have privately revealed the coalition's plan to get the majority of Canberra federal public servants back into the office had proven toxic in their electorates, as many voters did not realise the policy only applied to bureaucrats and not to ordinary workers. Adam, this is again a problem, a failure in messaging, in failing to communicate a policy that actually should be hugely popular. I don't recall Premier Chris Minns having many problems with this when he campaigned on it before he became New South Wales Premier. Yeah,
look, that is true. It should have been sold much better, although just to briefly blow my own trumpet, I did say a month ago on Q&A that this policy would not work politically, and it hasn't, because they haven't been able to sell it properly. Sadly, work from home is very popular with a lot of people, and they thought that this policy applied to them. Of course, it did not, as you suggest. It was only about the public service. But, you know, people don't pay much attention to politicians and to politics, especially this election campaign, which, let's face it, is a bit of a snooze fest.
It is, and the Labor Party and their activists, of which there are many in the media, went hard on this policy. This was anti-female, it was misogynist, it was going to set female workers back decades. I mean, the hyperbole employed was extraordinary, but it's worked. They've backtracked on a key policy. Now, let's check in with how the election campaign is playing out on social media. We'll look at some Labor Party ads. I've got to say that they are creative. You've got to give them that. We'll start off with Environment Minister Tanya Plibersek. She had this to say.
So apparently Peter Dutton's done a backflip on working from home. Who believes it? He can change what he says, but he can't change who he is.
Authorised P. Erickson, ALP Canberra.
Now, that was a bit more conventional. That's the sort of ad we expect. Let's have a look at some of the more wacky, bizarre. This time, I think they're attempting to portray Albo as some kind of, I don't know, alpha male heartthrob.
Let him cook. Let him cook now. Let him cook. I said let him cook.
Lock up your wives. I don't know I don't know who that's targeting. Here's Albo dropping some mad beats. These are official ads, people. Official ads.
They are completely delusional. Completely delusional. They are delulu with no solulu. Delulu with no...
Authorised P. Erickson, ALP Canberra.
And Labor are not above a little bit of election misinformation.
You know, the problem with Peter Dutton is he's all no, no, no. No to tax cuts, no to helping the cost of living, no to cutting student debt. He's a no to everything. Unless it's big long lunches for bosses, then he's a massive yes.
Authorised P. Erickson, ALP Canberra.
And the Greens, we should never forget the Greens. Let's have a look at this effort.
Yo, they want to know who's that girl. Come on. Who's that come on. Who's that what's my name,
Authorised by Acroft for the Greens, New South Wales, Sydney.
I've got to pause for some sort of commentary there. What was that, Adam?
Well,
what are the Greens smoking?
Look, I just think, taken collectively, if these ads are effective, it's a reminder that we have to get rid of compulsory voting very soon. But the let him cook one, I mean, he's been cooking for 3 years and the dish is not particularly tasty, but
no.
maybe people like this stuff. But overall, it's a sad indictment on our politics, isn't it? These ads are pathetic, really.
They are pathetic, but they're the ones that are having cuts through on social media. And as we know, social media is where people are absorbing so much of their news. It's not just young people anymore. We're talking people 50 and under, and increasingly over 50 as well. This is where you can reach people who are not that engaged, and this is the sort of nonsense reaching them. Let's have a look at what a conservative activist group Advance has been up to.
Forget you, pal. Thanks for nothing. So I say, forget you, pal. Thanks for nothing. And I storm right out of there.
That's telling him, Homer.
Authorised by Sandra Burke, Advance Australia, Canberra.
I've got to say, Advance are a lot more clever than whoever's doing the Liberals ads. And I would just, if I were them, I'd make some phone calls and collaborate, because they are just putting ads together, whether they're social media ads or mainstream media ads, that actually are humorous. They're not cringy and just so predictable.
And everyone loves The Simpsons too. The Simpsons illusion, it's kind of our generation, maybe. So we like it. But you know, generally, the two major parties are so close together that you just get these sorts of ads, kind of ads about nothing. So it's really an indictment on both the major parties.
Absolutely. Now, rising tide has struck again. Earlier today, a climate protester disrupted a press conference about mental health to heckle the Prime Minister.
When it came to working from home and the sacking of 41,000 public servants.
This Albanese, you say you care about young people, and yet since getting elected, your government has approved 33 new coal and gas projects.
And I haven't
You're
been...
condemning young people like this to a lifetime of climate disaster.
Adam, these folk will never be happy. I mean, how much more green can the Australian government be? But they're still carrying on like that. I'm surprised we're not having masses of them super gluing themselves to the streets, because we saw that for several years.
Well, look, I thought it was ironic that she was crashing a mental health summit because if there's any evidence of a mental health crisis, it's surely that woman. I mean,
no, we are not passing any sort of judgments on her mental health. Let me just say that in case she's litigious particularly.
Yes,
now, of course. Now, this is worrying news for Peter Dutton. Anthony Albanese, as we know, is strengthening his position in the polls as preferred leader, and the negative feedback from voters is very interesting on Peter Dutton. Now, let's take this with a grain of salt because this is Labor Commission focus groups that I'm about to quote from. But these are some of the words that these people in these focus groups have used to describe the Liberal leader. They include extreme, creepy, aggro, charmless, too Trumpy, looks better with glasses, and a banker with a W. Am I allowed to say that on television? I'm not sure. Do we take this seriously? I mean, certainly the polls show that Anthony Albanese is increasing his lead, but I would suggest that's not because he looks scary, Peter Dutton. It's just because we're not hearing much from him that differentiates the coalition from what we already have.
And I think the coalition should be taking advantage of this persona. I mean, he comes across as stern and serious and authoritative, and these are uncertain times. So that should be working, but sadly it's not so far for the coalition.
Well, what can they do to turn things around? We saw how successful Peter Dutton was in turning around those poll numbers and getting the voice vote defeated, getting the referendum defeated. How can he tap back into that, Peter Dutton? Because that's been missing, I've got to say, in 2025.
Yeah, look, because there was a stark difference. There was a real choice. I think so far in this campaign, there's not really a real choice. I mean, the issues are fairly minor. I think if they want to turn the tide, they need a big announcement that gets everyone's attention, and it's going to be controversial. You know, I think we at the IPA would say that we're going to dump net zero. That's what the Tories did in the UK. They've done it. They've announced it. It's not economically or even scientifically possible. So we may as well dump it and let's have the argument.
Absolutely. Let's have the debate. It's a cost of living election, and cost of living is impacted greatly by energy costs. So absolutely, that would be a battleground that I think he could win. Adam Crichton, thank you for your time tonight.
Thanks, Rita.